Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach, always available too at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I'm married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need.
I got it.
I just have to tell you that this show is Sex Help with Carol the Coach, and it is about sexual addiction. It's about learning more about sexual addiction for the sex addicts, for their partners. It's about those three circles that many sex addicts are totally aware of: the inner circle, deal-breaking behaviors; the middle circle, behaviors that are slippery slope behaviors that will get you into trouble; and healthy behaviors. And tonight we're going to be talking with Alex Katehakis, and she has written this incredible book called Mirror of Intimacy. And it actually is a book that centers around daily reflections that explore and support healthy human sexuality. Now, I know if you're listening to this show and you're reeling from your husband or wife's sexual addiction, or you're reeling from your own addiction, you may not believe that healthy sexuality is possible. But I'm here to tell you that once you've calmed down the brain and you've had a certain amount of recovery, then it's time to reconnect with your sexuality and or your partner's sexuality and begin to develop healthy sexuality again. And maybe you've never had healthy sexuality. You know, we live in a society where we were never given good, healthy messages about sex. And that's what I love about this book. I got to tell you, it is just coming out. It's a meditation a day for a full year, and it truly is an opportunity to feed the brain positive thoughts about emotional and erotic intelligence. Now, that means that when you're ready, it's important to feed your brain the information, the thoughts, the feelings of what healthy sexuality looks like. So I cannot wait to interview this woman. She's amazing. She's just got a wonderful reputation in the field. She has received the Carnes Award for, just being an incredible contributor to the world of sexual addiction. And that's what CSATs in the business try to do. we work at helping you to get healthy, to recover, and to inspire you to be your best self. And that's why it's so important for you, when you're ready, to put healthy sexuality on the front burner. And again, I get you may not have gotten any healthy messages. It may be your experience that when you were younger, if you were involved in any kind of sex play, any kind of normal exploration, you were caught and shamed and blamed. Or it might have been where you got exploited by somebody else. And so sex has never really felt safe. And as a result, you have to find people in your life that can help to normalize just the gift of sex. I mean, clearly, it is so important to do that. Well, I just turned my phone off and it still rang. Okay. Technology, what can we say? It happens. So I know that one of the reasons that I believe that I'm in this field is that my mother was very open about sexuality, and she probably talked to me somewhere between the ages of 6, 7, 8, 9, but I really want to say closer to 6, about real terms for genitalia and what sex was and how penises entered the vagina and made babies. And she really explored what healthy sexuality was. Now, I remember I disseminated this information on the playground in elementary school, and to this day, I cannot believe that the principal didn't get calls from parents of children that came home and maybe repeated back what I had told them or talked about the proper terminology, but they didn't. And I was that comfortable that early on because of my own upbringing. But many of you didn't get that upbringing. You were blamed and shamed. And as a result, your brain locked in on not only compulsivity, having some sort of sexual activity that you wanted to participate in over and over and over again, but you also developed that shame or guilt or fear of being discovered, and those two situations combined created what we call the perfect storm for sexual addiction. And so, again, I'm just thrilled to have Alex on and to be talking about what this book means to her. Psychologists and therapists all over the country are really excited to be teaching from this book and exposing, if you will, their clients to the joy, celebration, and enrichment this book has to offer. It is a therapeutic tool. So think about it. You've heard me interview Bill and Ginger Burkaw, who talk about how to develop healthy skills back in the bedroom once you've recovered from sexual addiction and you feel like you're ready to rekindle or develop or redevelop healthy sexuality. It first starts with communication in the brain, but then it's so important to find safe ways to experience the body. That's important. I know in my group tonight, we talked about what was your first experience with brain lock and sexuality? Was it finding some playboys or playgirls with your friends? Was it getting on the internet for the first time and having something pop up that allowed you to view pornography for the first time? Was it somebody who took advantage of you and threatened you or made you feel bad about yourself? We've talked about it before. sexual addiction can occur for a variety of reasons, but most people fall into one of two categories. The first category is that they develop some behaviors that become habitual and very routinized and ingrained. And that behavior then becomes compulsive, and the addict continues to look for new ways to lighten up the reward center and develop neurocircuitry that produces the kinds of chemicals that make you feel good. Now, that's one type. The second pathway for people to get involved in sexual addiction is often reenactment trauma. And that means that somewhere, somehow, in your childhood, you've been abused, neglected, exploited, and as a result, many times people choose to either reenact that trauma and take control of their own lives, and by choosing to become promiscuous or choosing sexually addictive behaviors or even choosing abusive behaviors, they feel they're in control. It's not being done to them. They are now able to do to others what has been done to them. Or the reenactment trauma may be a little bit different from the actual offense, but it parallels metaphorically or parallels in a way the same process. And I know that can be difficult to understand, but if you have ever experienced any kind of neglect or abuse, it may be then you participate in a behavior that creates that sense of abuse for you too. And when that happens, what oftentimes can occur is that it feels so familiar and predictable that the compulsion occurs and you want to engage in the behavior more and more and more. So if you've ever wondered, why am I compulsive about sexuality? Why do I have to expose myself? Why am I into exhibitionism? Why am I interested in viewing pornography, voyeuring, if you will? Why do I want to look through people's windows? Oftentimes, that has to do with a childhood issue. All right, you are talking to Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, the only CSAT in Indianapolis, Indiana. Can you believe that? You heard me talk a couple of weeks ago about how when I sent some clients to Dr. Milt Magnus, who has a wonderful couples intensive program, he then refers his clients while they're staying there to Sex Addicts Anonymous meetings and COSA meetings. And my client was asked, hey, you're from Indianapolis, do you know Carol the Coach? And he goes, well, yeah, she's my counselor. And, of course, they all had a laugh because they listen to my radio show. And they're like, oh, my gosh, you've got that counselor. Well, it's kind of fun, I have to admit. It's very fun to get out there in the world and know that I'm making a difference and that people are very interested in listening to the show because it disseminates such good information because I have the best experts in the world. So, again, tonight we're going to be talking with Alex, and she's a CSAT who has made it her mission to help sex addicts and their partners to find healthy sexuality again. And she has this wonderful book for anybody called Mirror of Intimacy, which contains a year's worth of daily reflections that explore and support the range of human sexualities as a divine gift and a human right. You know, when I work with men and women who've lost their libido, and that often occurs as a result of sexual addiction, but it also occurs as a result of hormonal changes and age and being too busy and multitasking and putting sex on the back burner. It requires that we teach clients how to reframe that part of their life and make it their mission to give themselves the gift of their own sexuality. And that's why there's a lot of different opinions out there about masturbation, and we know that to be true. There really is. But what I know to be true is that human sexuality is natural, normal, and necessary. And it's important for everybody to appreciate and to explore in a way that feels comfortable to them. And if sex isn't comfortable, then you need somebody who is going to help you work through those issues. Yeah, and that's what the show's all about. It's helping people work through the issues. Okay, if you need to call me, I can be reached at 646-595-3284. And really looking forward to talking with you and talking with Alex and figuring out what it is that helps people to feel more comfortable with their sexuality. You're listening to Sex Help with Carol the Coach. And if you need to get a hold of me and you don't feel comfortable calling, you can email me at carolthecoach@aol.com. And you'll find there that it is easy to access my email, and then I'll read your letter on the line. So, again, an interesting show tonight. We're going to find out more about Mirrors of Intimacy, which is a book of daily reflections, over a year's worth. So, Alex, welcome to the show. Congratulations on such an excellent book.
Thank you, Carol.
Yes, you have to be really excited about this because this is so readable and is so inspirational. It helps people every day to improve their sense of self and sexuality and sexual process.
Yeah, I would say that's true. I would say that this book was definitely a labor of love for me and my co-writer, Tom Bliss, and that we were very surprised to see the reaction we got to it when we started launching the meditations every day online. And that's, it culminated in a book coming out this month.
Yes, so share with us how this did get developed, because you started online, and explain to our listening audience your mission and what made you decide to go this direction with the information.
Well, some of it was, just happened, really. I would say that, to answer your first question, the mission is that when I started the Center for Healthy Sex, I really started with a mission that, this recognition that human beings form relationships in order to grow, learn, and experience life, essentially, and that a person's sexuality is intimately tied to our human need to connect with others. But then there's this power and allure of sex that can lead people into all sorts of problems with sexuality, and sex can become a source of pain or confusion, self-consciousness, embarrassment, guilt, shame, you name it, and even addiction. So my mission is to create a restorative path towards growth and connection for people, and vitality, sexual vitality, by helping them regain healthy, fulfilling, and soulful sex lives. And so, that's a big aspiration, and that's why it's just that, an aspiration. But that's how we started. That's the spirit in which we started with this book, is what if we took 366 topics about that related to sex and sexuality and relationship, and we wrote daily meditations that were inspirational for people, that also guided them towards a few healthy sex acts every day.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And, by co-writing with a male, what was that like, when you're working with someone and working on intimacy, and what was the process like?
Well, we divided the words up. We literally just divided the alphabet, and we started. We each, would just take a topic and write. So we didn't actually write together. We wrote separately. But what started to happen was that I think we started to become mutually inspired by each other. That I initially found the meditations incredibly easy to write. They were things that were a culmination of my life experience, my wisdom, my professional knowledge, and they were really fun to write, and I was surprised at how quickly and easily they were coming to me. And then Tom's orientation is a little bit different. His focus is more on social justice and sexual rights because he's not a psychotherapist, but he is a man in recovery, which he openly states in the book. And so, and he's also a wonderful writer, so I started to feel challenged to make my entries more complex. And so it started to feel like a jazz improvisation over time, where we were really inspiring each other and pushing each other to write in more intricate and detailed ways. And we only had 300 words to do it in. So we packed in as much as we could in a very short, space. And that's more or less how it went. And it did become kind of a dialogue and a love affair, if you will, between the two of us. And I mean that in a platonic love affair sense, not as in lovers' love affair sense. And it was really a beautiful, fun process.
Well, yes, and Tom's got quite the history. I mean, he's appeared as a guest educator on the PBS series A Place of Our Own and has discussed topics ranging from emotional literacy to self-care, and he's a self-proclaimed love and sex addict, and he talks about that, like you said in the book. So this is a man who's experienced it, and it sounds like you have deemed him a wonderful writer. You can tell that the two of you really were thinking very similarly as you put this book together because, again, it's very thoughtful. It's challenging. I was talking to my listeners before you joined us that we don't get enough good information about healthy sexuality.
Yeah, so we really don't.
Can you give us an example of one of the meditations?
You mean just anyone?
Yeah, just grab one, or think off the top of your head what's one of your favorite meditations in the book.
Well, let's see. I could read today's, or I could just pick one if you like. I mean, when you say one of my favorite ones, I don't even know how to answer that.
Okay, read today's before us.
Okay. So today, let's see, what is today's date? The 14th of December or the 15th? Today's the 15th.
It is the 15th, yes.
Okay, so today's entry is about transference, and it starts with a quote by Plato saying, "Kissing Agathon, I held my life on my lips. I wanted to pass over, poor thing, into him." Transference prevents us from engaging authentically with others because we're actually in relationship with our own psychological makeup. For example, we might unconsciously transfer our love or hatred of a parent onto a partner, teacher, or child. In the sexual arena, we might unknowingly project negative feelings or irrational hopes surrounding a figure from our past onto our current lover. A common version of such transference is the expectation of, quote, great sex, which sets our partner up to disappoint us because no one can fulfill our implicit fantasies. Whenever we perceive a situation solely through the lens of our own psychology, we are likely transferring our limited, programmed view onto life and others rather than living in reality and real relationship. It's damaging and costly to transfer some past others' vices or virtues onto our present partner because it keeps us from knowing his or her unique self and from renewing our own self. In the early stages of love, we tend to transfer positive attributes onto our lover, obscuring his or her imperfections so that the relationship can progress. But eventually, we must throw off the veil of transference in order to perceive our partner in the light of objective reality. To see others this clearly, though, means we have found the self-knowledge to recognize our transferred issues as well as the compassion to accept others with their gloriously individual flaws and merits. When you can appreciate the unique qualities of all who exist and perceive yourself and your partner from the viewpoint of that inclusive totality, your partner and you become unheralded new creative beings. Dropping your transference sharpens and expands your perception during sex, allowing two independent individuals to become one and to create a cosmic third, to create conversation rather than maintaining a wholly internal monologue. And then there are 3 daily healthy sex acts. The first one is, do you transfer your idealized version of love onto your partner? How does this set him or her up for failure in your eyes? The second one is, make a simple list today of all of your partner's attributes and why you love being in relationship with him or her. And finally, what past person's behavior do you tend to see in others? Today, practice recognizing novel and unique qualities in your lover, friend, boss, coworker, or neighbor.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's today's reading, and all of them are equally as thought-provoking, I think.
Well, obviously as marital therapists, one of the things we know is that we unconsciously pick our partner because they do reflect our childhood. They reflect somebody, our mother or our father, in our childhood, and we get to work through the unmet needs we had with them and make a better coupleship as we get to know ourselves better. And, obviously that meditation very clearly says, although we have a tendency to do that, it's our responsibility to see them as separate individuals and to have gratitude about their uniqueness and the things that we love about them, or things that we can appreciate about them if we're going to be in partnership with them, so that we can be happy and healthy and whole.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's a great exercise to have to write out an appreciation of our partner and what they bring to the table that we actually admire or like. There's nothing healthier than looking at life from gratitude as opposed to why something isn't working.
And I think people, do tend to project onto their partners their ideals and ideas of what they want them to be. And this is where people get into trouble with breaking up and divorcing, because when we really get into reality and we really look closely at who this person is in front of us and recognize that we are equally imperfect and we equally annoy them, as my colleague and friend Stan Tatkin says, there are no, or all partners are high maintenance, is what he says. We're all high maintenance. And our judgments create separations, and our false ideas of who that person is creates problems, as opposed to a deep recognition and gratitude for who they are and the gifts that they do bring to our lives, which sometimes can be very challenging for us because they're forcing us to grow and change in ways that we may not like.
Right, may not like, but probably know on some level, unconsciously, that they're the perfect vehicle to get us to again, meet those unmet needs and figure out how to basically do that ourselves. I remember when I was single, Harville Hendricks had said, if you're a single person, it's really difficult to do that deep work because almost invariably you need a partner of some sort to help you with that because of the transference. The transference is the vehicle by which you then get to understand what it is about yourself that projects those needs onto that person or just in general affects your everyday living with that person. And I love, Alex, that you talk about in that meditation not only how we transfer our unmet needs, but also how we're imperfect and how we have to look at that.
Right. I mean, I think when we stop blaming and shaming our partners and really look at ourselves, and in 12-step parlance, they talk about, staying on your side of the street, or not just that, but looking at your part in things. And that is a different flashlight. Instead of blaming and shaming the other, we're really looking at ourselves and our own foibles and asking ourselves where we can change and we can make the relationship different rather than trying to change our partner.
Well, you're somewhat breaking up right now, so I'm going to... Yeah, there you go. Now you sound clear again. Now, I was talking to the listeners, and oftentimes sexuality is off the table for newly recovered sex addicts. And, you know, what I like about this book is that it's absolutely an opportunity to, once you're ready to resume that sexuality, to practice a meditation every single day. Do you believe that you can practice this stuff? Because so much of it is not directly about sexuality. It is indeed about how we feel about ourselves and our loved ones. Do you think that you can get this book if you're newly recovered?
Well, this book is for people in recovery, in all stages of recovery, because the book's focus, I mean, as you read the book, the thread of the book is all about you and what you're doing and what you need to change and what you need to, where you need to grow and expand. It's not about how to have sex with somebody else. It's about self-love, self-compassion, and self-inventory in a lot of ways. So this book was written specifically as a guide for people in all sorts of recovery, and everyone has sexual issues, and also as a sort of companion book to Erotic Intelligence, which is for people in the later stages of recovery from sex addiction, which is more of a how-to-have sex again book. But this book is really challenging the sexual underpinnings and philosophies that we have about what sex means to us, what meaning we make of it, how do we define a healthy sexuality, what does eroticism mean to us, not what someone else thinks it is. We try to keep our hands off of that idea and really make it a book that opens space for people to ask self-reflexive questions and have critical thinking about who they are sexually at this stage of their lives, or recovery, whatever they are, because our sexuality shifts and changes over our lifespan. And who somebody is in early recovery is very different who they were when they first started having problems sexually.
Oh, absolutely. Now, can I ask you, because you referenced Erotic Intelligence, your book, and I would like for you to explain to the listeners, what do you believe erotic intelligence is?
Well, I think the word erotic, or one of the definitions of erotic, is the deliberate seeking of pleasure. And intelligence, a definition of intelligence is the skilled use of reasoning. So when we deliberately seek pleasure, that is a bodily-based, nonverbal, sort of more animalistic motivational state in all mammals. It's a non-thinking state. It's driven by the body. And intelligence is mitigated by our higher functioning parts of the brain. And so rather than being reckless with our sexuality and simply seeking pleasure, we're using some reasoning, because that's what separates us from animals, is that we can think about whether we want to have sex or not and with whom we want to have it and what the sexual act means to us. So rather than doing it indiscriminately or in ways that are destructive or hurtful to self or others, erotic intelligence is about intentional sex. And I think that is something that all of us could use more of, especially in a culture that's so heavily sexualized now.
Okay, but now my second question is, what do you see as intentional sex?
Well, I think, again, that's different for everybody. First of all, setting an intention for the kind of sex you want to have would be a good place to start. And Mirror of Intimacy puts a lot of emphasis on just that, which again is about getting clear about your sensuality, your patterns, what sex means to you, what does morality mean to you, how important is communication to you, how do you set a stage for mood, where do your promises and your value systems fit in? I mean, it's a very rich tapestry of all of these things, and when you know what your intention is for sex, Then the fun part comes when you put your attention on it and create the kind of setting that you want and the sexual acts you want to involve yourself in with another person.
Yes.
So intention is about setting the stage. First of all, getting clear with what you want and what you know is good for you, and then attention is about bringing it to fruition and making it happen, if you will.
Well, and so in some ways, this book really was a spin-off from Erotic Intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, Erotic Intelligence was certainly the precursor to it, because that book came out in 2010, and this book is out now 4 years later. But this book is a much more philosophical and spiritual investigation of sex, whereas Erotic Intelligence is a self-help book for single people and couples who are in recovery from sex addiction. Mirror of Intimacy is for people whether they are in recovery or not, because there's such universal topics in this book about sex and sexuality.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you know there would be an audience for this type of book?
Well, everybody loves to talk about sex, it turns out, and we have so little, it's just sort of shockingly little guidance on what it means to have mature, spiritual, luscious, erotic, hot sex that doesn't come from the world of pornography, that we had a pretty good inkling that people would be interested. And so it was Tom's idea just to start sending the meditations out literally as we wrote them every day. Sometimes we would just write them the night before and put them up, and they were unedited, to our current mailing list at Center for Healthy Sex. And this included, clients past, present, and therapists from around the country. And, in very short order, people started emailing us back and saying, wow, these are amazing. These are changing my life. I just ended a relationship because of these. It wasn't good. I just fell in love with somebody because of these. We had university professors contact us, therapists, authors. It just went on. And now we have a readership of over 8,000 people every day from all over the world. And so it just sort of caught on in ways that was very surprising in some ways and not in others to us. And I think now that the book is out, more and more people will have access to it and will tell other people, because that's the other thing that's happened is, people are buying this book as gifts for Christmas naturally and for friends, and the hardback turned out really incredibly beautifully, and that will be available on Amazon any time now, supposedly between the 16th and the 19th of this week, which is tomorrow through Friday. We have a limited edition of 1,500 hardcovers that will be available to our readership.
And how much?
And the paperback is out already.
Yeah, because that's $15.16, is it not?
No, the hardback is $25.
Right.
And I don't know what the soft cover sells for $17 on CreateSpace.com, and I don't know what Amazon is selling it for. But
I'm telling you, I just looked it up. It's $15.16, even
fantastic.
though the retail is $17.99.
Okay,
yeah.
So then it's
and
on Amazon.
That hardback was just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, that's a special edition, isn't it?
Right. As I said, we only printed 1,500 of those, and we have over 8,000 readers. So we're pretty sure people will buy them as keepsakes, and they're great for wedding gifts or Valentine's because they're such beautiful books.
I can tell you're talking about another one of your babies. You can feel the pride and just the nurturing that has gone into this. Did writing this book change your views on sex and sexuality? And if so, how?
Well, I think they probably deepened my views that I've always held. And, it's really a challenging thing, as we age to determine I'll just speak for myself, what is true for me versus the way the culture is informing me. And luckily, I am surrounded by young people, and so I'm always checking, because I don't want to sound like, my mother, or an old person who's just out of touch with things. But I think as we age, our ideas about everything mature. Whether it's, our politics or our food intake or our sex. So there is an aspect of that to it, that there's a wisdom that is in this book that I wouldn't have had 15 years ago, let's say. So it hasn't really, in that way it changed my views about sex and sexuality, but it also deepened what I already knew when I was in my 30s, and I was really exploring the depth of sex and sexuality for myself at that time, and what it meant to be in a long-term committed relationship, and what the purpose of sex was besides just, having an orgasm and getting off, or pleasure and fun. I mean, those are certainly very important parts of sex, but how does that process deepen over time? And that is endlessly and infinitely fascinating to me, because I think that's a question that I'll never answer. I mean, sometimes I tell people I'm no closer to answering this question of what healthy sex is than they are, because it's different for all of us, and it's different every year of our lives.
Right, it's ever-changing.
Sure.
So then, obviously, would you say that this book has changed your life? It has created more wisdom?
Yes, I would say that's accurate, and it's made me more passionate about people finding their way to sex as an act of vitality and rejuvenation and celebration, and that which is life-affirming, versus using it as a weapon of destruction against themselves and other people, and hurting themselves with sex.
And so you found that to be true a lot.
Pardon me?
You found that people hurt themselves and others.
Well, I think our culture is sort of teaching people that. There was a time when you had to have a credit card to look at pornography online, which meant you were an adult. But now with all the tube channels, pornography is free for everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're 3 or 30 or 80. Anybody can get online and look at hardcore, intensely, sometimes violent pornography, especially violence against women. There's certainly violence in gay porn against men. And it's changing the way that we think about sex. We think about it as a commodity. We think about it as something that we do or we use other people for in order to get a momentary, hit or sense of power and control. And all of those things are an integrated part of what sex is, but when you pull out discrete pieces of anything, you start to wear away at the fabric of it. And an example of that is when I think spirituality in the New Age really started to blossom, in the 70s and 80s, and people were running around with T-shirts on that had a picture of the Buddha or the Om sign, or they went to yoga and they said, well, I'm spiritual now. But their psychological behavior did not line up with this spiritual trappings they had on, because they'd become, it was just a commercial thing you could purchase. You could purchase a Buddha T-shirt and wear it, and then instantly you were spiritual. But that's one piece of Buddhism, and Buddhism is an incredibly intricate cosmology that requires a lot of study and dedication to it. And likewise, sex is made up of aggression and eroticism and beauty and joy and sensuality. But when you take one piece of it out, then the structure of it starts to break down. And so I think that as a culture, we will commodify anything and sell it. And a lot of times what we're doing is we're giving, especially young people, a lot of false information about the ideal of things or what things could be. It's sort of like saying, well, just eat junk food, and then the person never knows that there are other options in life that actually make them feel better and make them healthier over time. It's still food.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Now, clearly we're talking about sexuality in general and power and control and exploitation. And again, your book reminds people to be gentle and to appreciate and to understand even their feelings, the angry feelings, the sad feelings, the feelings of loss and grief. How do you think this meditation book can serve people in recovery circles? Because you said this is a little different than erotic intelligence. This can serve both the recovered or couples that have not needed to be in recovery.
Yes. So, I'm sorry, what is your question again then? Yes, it's for couples that aren't.
So my question is, how will this serve people in recovery circles?
Oh, well, I think what it will do for people in recovery circles is it will have them start to ask questions about sex and sexuality that don't necessarily have to do with, do I drink today or don't I drink today? Or, do I overeat today or don't I overeat today? It's more obvious for people that are in the sexual recovery rooms, but I think, again, as human beings, we are integrated whole persons with a multitude of aspects to ourselves. So if we're just focusing on whether we drink or don't drink and not paying attention to how well we're eating and our spending issues and our sexual issues, then again we're only looking at one small slice of who we are as human beings. So sexual recovery is, I think, in large part the core of most addictions because it ties into our self-esteem, our body image, who we are in the world as male or female, and what it means to be male or female to us. So examining our sexuality in any recovery, I think, makes the recovery a much more integrated and holistic proposition than just looking at one aspect. And naturally, if the person's destroying themselves with a drug or with a process addiction, they need to stop those behaviors first and foremost. But then once they get into the underlying mechanism that drives those behaviors, it's well worth looking at our sexuality and our relationships.
Well, I would absolutely agree. And so this book inspires people to do that in a very safe way.
I think so, because it's not pointed at an addict. It's anybody can read it. There's certainly pieces in there about love addiction, sex addiction, addiction in general, because we live in an addicted culture. So it would have been hard to leave that out. And I think, there are some topics that may have nothing to do with anything, like there's a topic on truth, for example, or art, or reality, or renewal, health, awareness, boundaries, things of that nature, which applies to pretty much anybody.
Absolutely. And this has an array of approaches. I mean, the reflections reference attachment theory, mind-body nexus, neurobiology, 12-step principles, meditation techniques, obviously Eastern and Western philosophy, and even ancient world myths. So really, you don't come from just one place. You really embrace a variety of wisdom.
Yeah, and that was the beauty of the synthesis between Tom and I, because there was so much overlap in our ethos and our philosophies about life, but then we both had distinct strengths in our areas of expertise. Tom is very interested in mythology and some of the worlds you just spoke about, and I'm a psychotherapist, so I'm going to bring more of the sort of neurobiological issues and psychotherapeutic issues into the mix too. So I tended to write the topics that were more psychologically minded, where he wrote the ones that were more socially or socially justice minded, and it just made it for a very rich reading, I think, because of that.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything else that you want to talk about that has to do with what this book has to offer individuals who want to understand themselves better, their sexuality better, and just their own sense of self-worth?
Let's see. Well, I guess a reminder that sex is fraught, no matter who we are and no matter what age we're at. And when we torture ourselves by thinking that other people have it right or other people are having better sex than we are telling ourselves a lie. The truth is that this is one of the biggest experiments on the planet right now, is this notion of having sex for the purposes of intimacy over time. Because we have to remember that sex originally was designed into the organism for procreation purposes. And as people started to live longer and longer and longer, we started to extend our sex lives well past our childbearing years, now into our 40s, 50s, and 80s for some people. And this is an unusual social experiment. And the idea that we come together for sex for the purposes of connecting, for the purposes of love, for the purposes of pleasure or fun, not just for having children, is a relatively new experience for the human race. And so everybody's muddling around and getting it wrong and confused about it. And it doesn't help that we have all these messages in the media that gives us permission to do it in the way the media displays it or the media portrays it. So we really have to come back to ourselves and get very quiet about what is true for ourselves and what we want, and then talk to or find a partner who seems to be like-minded enough, who's willing to go on this journey with you. There's not a television show on right now that doesn't show people cheating. It's just pervasive in all the hot shows on TV. It's what people do. And if that's what you want, then it's easy to do that, and it's easy to figure out how to do that. But if you want to try something different, then a book like Mirror of Intimacy is a book for you. And I think it's challenging. I think it definitely challenges people to come forward from the best parts of themselves, not being a lemming and doing what everybody else is doing, but figuring out your path and your way, to health and happiness and a healthy sexuality.
Oh, 100%. And, I can't help but feel like this book also reflects where you work and the Center for Healthy Sex. If anybody needs or wants to get a hold of Alex, they can reach her at alex@thecenterforhealthysex.com. And certainly the centerforhealthysex.com has a lot of workshops and treatment that assist people in really looking at themselves and determining what it is they need in regards to their entire self, including sex. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, that's true. At Center for Healthy Sex, we offer intensive outpatient programs for people, especially who are struggling with issues of sex and love addiction, whether male or female or partners of an addict. And initially, we work to help people stop the destructive behaviors, but more importantly, understand and have the direct experience of how they came to do what they do and how they've gotten caught in this cycle, with the intention of helping people restore their sexuality to something good and true and beautiful. And so you can go to our website at centerforhealthysex.com, and our intake counselors are available to answer questions at any time. Feel free to call for a free consultation. That number is 310-843-9902. And then, of course, you can buy Mirror of Intimacy at Amazon.com.
That's right. And as I indicated earlier, I'm looking right now. It is right now $15.16. And if you buy, $35 worth of books, you get free shipping, so that's another deal. And this hard copy, one of a kind, there's only 1,500 copies, so it really would make a nice gift, even if it doesn't get shipped to you till January, because you're told that at any point this thing's going to come out, but it is not out yet, correct?
Well, it's out. It's here, and it's at the Amazon Distribution Center. They're going to post it, they said, anywhere from December 16th to the 19th. So sometime between now and Friday, that hardcover will be available on Amazon. You just have to keep watching the page.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. You're such a significant contributor to the field of sex addiction as well as healthy sexuality, and that makes so much sense that your niche may be sexual addiction, but it also is helping people to get to know themselves on all spiritual, physical, emotional levels, including the sexual level. And so appreciate that. It's no wonder you received the Carnes Award in 2012 for that significant contribution. So anybody who's listening, this is a real treat to be interviewing Alex. And I just want to thank you for our listeners and certainly for myself. You're an inspiration.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. It's been a pleasure, and happy holidays to you and to all of your listeners. And let's have a great 2015.
You got it. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you next year.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so again, that was Alex Katehakis, and she is an amazing contributor to the field of human sexuality as well as sexual addiction. And as you can see, her book is thoughtful, it's reflective, and it really encourages you to look deep into your soul and think about the topics that will make you a better person, that will encourage you to contribute and communicate in a way that maybe you didn't think was possible. So I highly recommend that you get Mirror of Intimacy, written by Alex Katehakis. And, if you look at Blog Talk or my Facebook page, you'll see that her last name is Katehakis. She's a clinical director for the Center for Healthy Sex out of Los Angeles, California. And she has contributed with Tom Bliss, and it sounds like Tom Bliss has been an amazing contributor and collaborator with Alex. So we thank you, Tom, even though you weren't on the call. All right, so that's the show for tonight. Next week we're going to have a repeat show because I'm going to be on holiday. And so I want you to stay tuned. I picked my very favorite shows to repeat since I don't do that very often, probably only 5 or 6 times a year. And so I want you all to have a happy holiday, and I know that many of you are in distress and you just don't think your life will ever get back to normal. But when you work recovery, it works. And so I want you to know that I've never worked with anybody who, if they worked all the recovery tools, they didn't get better, healthier, and become the new and improved person, and that's what I promise for you. Now, I want you to be thinking about something for me. I have a Carol the Coach exercise for you, and that is every year, instead of coming up with a goal to work on, a New Year's resolution, if you will, I ask you to pick one word that you want to incorporate into your life to be a better person. One year for me, it was gratitude. I wanted to focus on gratitude and look at what was working as opposed to what wasn't. I know that my next-door neighbor, her word was communication because she really wasn't good at sharing her true feelings. So think of a word, and I want you to place it everywhere you can to remind you that that's going to be your 2015 goal. And you can go to carolthecoach.com, look up my blogs, and put Word of the Year in a search and get an article on that to learn about the dynamics of that special exercise. And so, as I say to you at all times, there'll only be one of you. So fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. And we will talk with you soon. Have a happy holiday. And I'll look forward to more Sex Help with Carol the Coach from my listening audience and spending time with you. Have a good one.